Good evening. Back at it for episode number 5 of the Kauffman Corner podcast. As always, the good Dr. Rany Jazayerli with us here in the program, one of the co-founders of Baseball Prospectus, of course, former author of Rob and Randy on the Royals, I guess co-author of that, author of Randy on the Royals, of course, so many other great pieces of material you've read, whether it's Grantland, The Ringer. He's a man about really the internet, I guess I would say. The king of the internet. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. Just so freaking tickled to be here talking some Royals baseball with you. It's a spectacular season so far. A split of the first two with the Orioles after 2 days of waiting through the rain to get it. Randy, and of course, one of the more encouraging signs, immediately leaves the game hurt. Thoughts on Edward Olivares and where we go from here?
Yes. First off, I just want to say it is so great to have you in my corner as my hype man, because every week you have to introduce me. And you just make me bigger and bigger, and pretty soon you're going to be introducing me as Mr. President or something. I don't know. It's I appreciate the enthusiasm for working with me. I wish we had that same kind of enthusiasm for the Royals right now.
Agreed.
But we don't. They're 9-16, and I just thought, how appropriate is it that Edward Olivares, who it's appropriate enough that he was probably the best hitter on the team, right? Had a 371 batting average as of right now. A guy who they sent to the minors on like 5 different occasions last year when we all were begging for him to get an extended opportunity. Finally, with Alberto Mondesi being out for the season, was getting an extended opportunity, was seizing it by its horns. Had another base hit today and immediately came out of the game with what we're told is a quad strain, which is, I assume, not a long-term injury, but probably long enough to put him on the IL for at least 10 days. And it's just so sort of typical of this team.
Wait a minute, do you think that'll put him on? Because, you know, what I usually like to do in these situations is I'm having a conversation with someone and they're like, okay, this is what it'll be, and it's a medical term. And I like to give them the, you think, and then go like, but you're not a doctor, right? Because this is different because you're a doctor. So come on.
Technically, yes, but I am a dermatologist. If he had a rash, I could tell you exactly how long that would keep him out. Not so sure about the quad strain. But I am a Royals fan, and so I know to err on the pessimistic side when it comes to these sorts of things. Maybe it has something to do with Alberto Mondesi going out with a minor injury that they were optimistic would not be serious, and then having it be the literal worst case scenario of a torn ACL. So I'm just going to assume he's going to be out for 10 days. Hopefully not. Maybe he'll be back in the lineup tomorrow. Salvador Perez has, maybe he's figured out whatever, stash of adamantium or whatever it is that keeps Salvador Perez in the lineup, like literally every day, playing through one injury after another and still hitting. But I have to assume Olivares is going to be out for a while. And it's just so typical of here. Finally, there's some like interesting. It's not just that the Royals aren't good. It's just they're not interesting. And there's not much. There's not much to be optimistic about future-wise in that it's not like their young players are raking. Bobby Witt is doing fine. I'm not disappointed, but I'm not. This isn't the second coming of Mike Trout quite yet either. So here's the one sort of unexpected surprise: a guy getting an opportunity and doing well with it, and then he goes out. So just one less thing for us to be excited about. But the Royals have, they have options in the minor leagues. We can talk about what they might do when with Olivares out for a while. We'll see if they do the right thing and actually promote somebody with youth and talent, as opposed to just giving more playing time to Ryan O'Hearn or whatever it is that they're going to do.
Well, I mean, and that, yeah, and I agree. And I mean, let's at least phrase it this way. Were you encouraged by what you were seeing with Edward Olivares?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, hitting the ball hard, his exit velocities have consistently been excellent. I mean, 95 and up almost every time, and a lot of 100-mile-an-hour hits. And just a guy, strikeout rate. He struck out 5 times in 35 at bats. I mean, that's a very small sample size, but when you're dealing with small sample sizes, one of the first things I look at is strikeout rate, because that does stabilize so quickly. So even in a 40 plate appearance sample size or whatever it is, a strikeout rate that low, very encouraging. Right. And he's not a 370 hitter, but he could hit 300, he hit 290. Yeah, and in 2022, when the league batting average is 230 something, if you hit 290, even if you don't hit for power, even if you don't walk, even if you don't play great defense, you're going to have value. Like, there's a certain batting average is overrated, but there's a certain point of batting average where you can't help but be a valuable player if you're hitting 60 or 70 points above the league average.
Right. And I think the frustrating part for you is, like you said, what's exciting about this team? What do Royals fans get their arms around? Bobby Witt Jr., let me answer if anyone was screaming at their computer going, how about Bobby Witt Jr.? Yes, I mean, not based upon his overwhelming, bucket of statistics he's thrown out there, but he is beginning to hit. We see the tools, and I've pointed out all year he was a slow starter last year, and maybe that's going to be his MO. So I think very soon we may be seeing some, hopefully we'll be seeing brilliant baseball from him. We've mentioned it already many times in the short life of this podcast that it's long overdue for the Kansas City Royals to bring a guy up and have him hit the ground running, right? To be playing at a high level. And Olivares was a guy when they would win 7-1 or 6-4 with 3 runs over the last couple innings, as they did in the first game today, as we tape here on a Sunday night, May 8th. You squint and you go, okay, I see it. If Olivares slots in there, there's a piece, right? Bobby Witt Jr., that's a piece. MJ Melendez is up and making good contact. I saw some of the numbers about how many times the exit velocity has been over 95 miles per hour. I think almost every one of his batted balls has been over 95 miles per hour. So that's what could encourage you, right? But are we just kidding ourselves? It's like all of that. Like I know, you and I, and if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a baseball nerd. You're a seam head, and you're looking at this, and those things are great. But the only thing that's really going to put people in the stands and get passion are wins and losses, right? Like the casual fan doesn't dig into the exit velocity, but it's the casual fan that really takes the attendance up, right? Like is all of this, are we not giving enough credit? Is it just, and even for us that like this minutia, are we not giving enough credit to this as just the process, right? Like we're seeing the foundation be laid. It's not happening as quick as we wanted it to. Maybe it's not happening as quick as the Royals wanted to, but the Olivares and the Melendez and the Witt Juniors, this is it starting to come together.
I think certainly on the hitting side, like given how disappointing the offense is, and as far as much as we talk about the pitching, the offense is last in the league in runs and close to the bottom of the league in every category. At the very least, I'm encouraged by the fact that the reason why the offense is so bad is largely because of the older guys. It's because Whit Merrifield is hitting 140, and we can talk about that. Salvador Perez is off to a very slow start, batting average-wise. Carlos Santana, obviously, who's hitting a $159 before he went on the disabled list. I'd much rather be those guys are struggling, whereas you're actually seeing signs of life from a Bobby Witt, from Rivera. MJ Melendez, a very small sample size there. Andrew Benintendi, at least if they do re-sign him, has probably several good years left. And there's been some good performances in the minor leagues, and we may see some of those guys later. I'm happy with that. The problem is on the pitching side, the problem has actually been more the younger guys that they've been trying to develop. Whereas Zack Greinke is the guy who's sort of keeping them afloat. So there are definitely green shoots here, but just not enough of them.
Green shoots, I like that. I will object a little bit, right? And I've said it already too many times since we started up here on Kauffman Corner. I don't want to come out and just take a bat to the organization every Sunday night.
That's my job,
right? And well, listen, it's my job too. I mean, trust me, I think I'd kill poor Alec Lewis from The Athletic. Because he comes on and he's got to be in that clubhouse every day and talking to guys, and then he comes on the radio and hears this guy going, well, this guy sucks, he sucks, and and it's a tough spot. I get that, and he does a very nice job of trying to balance it out, right? But you just said on the hitting. I mean, I was looking up the numbers coming into today, and of course all the websites don't regenerate all the updated numbers until sometime tonight. 29th in homers, 28th in walks, right? They make up for it by being 30th in strikeouts by a pitching staff, right? These are fundamental. These are what I think are probably the most fundamental statistics and fundamental characteristics of quality players. Like this is not like, back in the day, like when Brian Bannister was like, they bah humbugged him for diving into the numbers when he was pitching for the Royals. These are numbers that, like, if you strike a guy out, nothing good happens for the other team, right? So you should aspire for strikeouts. As much as my good friend Mike Boddicker laments and hates all the time about people trying to strike everybody out. I mean, I love him to death. He is the man, and he's a wealth of baseball knowledge. But strikeouts are important for pitchers, and maybe never more important than when hitters will freely give them to you. They're dead last. You know, oh, well, power, it's a big ballpark. It doesn't matter. Like, and if you don't want to use home runs, you can use exit velocities. Like, one of the guys that they're the most excited about is Nicky Lopez, and the ball literally dribbles off his bat. I mean, like, it's 80-something miles per hour that it comes off. And he hit 300, and everyone's like, yeah, but he hit 300. It's like, yeah, but the reason why 84 miles an hour exit velocity, average exit velocity last year should concern you with his 300 batting averages, it says that the 300 average was kind of a fluke. And he was red hot down the stretch to get there. And so if you don't want to call it home runs, fine, call it hitting the ball hard. And walks are a sign of not swinging at crappy pitches and being able to take the free base. So, like, when you say you see it with the offense, do we really, when it's 29th in home runs and 28th in walks? And I get, you know, we get Salvi and Witt, they're not doing their part, but you know, that's, we come back to what we said 4 years ago. Are these guys going to be any good when you're ready to contend? And so, like, that's, to me, you know, the disease that's here, right? The symptom is who it is. The disease is the organization never does these things.
Soren, please do not misconstrue my previous comments as a defense of the organization in any way, shape, or form. I'm certainly not trying to do that. I mean, what you're describing, well, I agree with 100%. I mean, except maybe Nicky Lopez. I will say this. The most important thing about trying to get a hit is not striking out. And so, yes, his exit velocities are much lower than the average, but his strikeout rate is one of the best in the major leagues. It is possible to hit 300 that way. It is certainly much harder to do that today than it was when you and I were kids watching baseball in the 1980s. And that's what we've talked about. He's a throwback player in an era not really suited to his skills. Because in the old days, you had a contact hitter like him might strike out 30 or 40 times in a season. You go back to, you know, like a Scott Fletcher type or Jody Reed maybe. You know, now he struck out, I think, 74 times last year, and that's still cause for a parade. But like, guys could do that much more easily in the 1980s. So, but even with as poor as he's hitting this year in terms of exit velocity, his OBP coming in today was 329. Like, that says something, especially in 2022, he still has some value. But the more fundamental issue here, walks and homers. You mentioned it, walks, home runs. This organization, my entire life, has driven me crazy with a lack of attention to the most fundamental building blocks of offense, walks and home runs. I remember 15 or 20 years ago, back when Rob Nyer and I were writing about the Royals all the time, he actually created a very simple stat. He had a name for it. I feel bad. I can't remember what it was, where he simply ranked every team in baseball on the hitting side and on their pitching side, but where they ranked in terms of walks drawn and home runs allowed. So, you know, 1 to 15, you know, in the American League, you were first all the way down to 15th, and those walks drawn, home runs that you hit, and then how many walks you allowed, how many home runs you allowed. And I believe there was a year like 2005, 2006 when the Royals were at their absolute worst, where they literally were dead last in all four categories at the same time, which should be impossible, especially playing in a ballpark that's wasn't necessarily conducive to home runs. And they still managed to be, you know, give up the most in the league as well as hitting the fewest. You can't win without some ability in those two areas. I mean, the Royals came as close as they could in 2014, 2015, but even then they were, you know, they didn't give up a lot of walks. They didn't give up a lot of home runs, which made up for the fact that they also didn't do much of those on offense. And then the strikeout thing, this is the fundamental problem I have with the pitching instruction in this organization, whether it's Cal Elder or whoever you want to blame. I don't want to keep bringing up his name. I feel like at some point, right, if we say his name too many times, he's going to appear in a mirror and like haunt us for the rest of our lives or something. You know, I'm looking at it. Carlos Hernandez, 8 strikeouts in 18 innings. You know, that's a guy who throws 100 miles an hour, and he's got 8 strikeouts in 18 innings. Like, what are we doing here? It's not all Zack Greinke. I mean, yes, Zack Greinke has a lot to do with that. Zack Greinke is an absolute anomaly in the sport in 2022, in the funnest possible way. I mean, right. He had 3 strikeouts today, which was the second highest total of the season. Let's appreciate Zack Greinke just for a moment. I feel like with all this negativity, what he's doing is it's remarkable. He's a 2.69 ERA at the moment in 6 starts. He's been, you know, one of the 20 best starters in all of baseball, I think. 10 strikeouts in 33 2/3 innings. That's impossible. There was an article I think on MLB.com today which just looked at the first 5 starts of a season, and the last time a guy had an ERA under 3 with a strikeout rate this low, just in 5 starts. You think in 5 starts, somebody would have had a fluky first 5 starts of the season. Nobody has been this effective and this averse to strikeouts since Ricky Bones in 1994, which I remember that season from a fantasy perspective. Where
I do too.
You probably remember. I think won like 18 games, had like 45 strikeouts.
Ricky bad to the bonus.
Yes, and I remember trying to convince a guy in a fantasy league I was in to sell high because there was no way on earth that he would continue to succeed with that strikeout rate. He refused to believe me. He's like, well, he also doesn't walk a lot. I'm just, this was the early days of analytics. Nobody took us seriously. Ricky Bones turned into a pumpkin the following year. And Zack Greinke might, but if there's anybody in baseball, we've been saying this for years, who can somehow be effective this way, it's probably Zack Greinke. To his credit, 33 2/3 innings, 3 walks. I mean, as bad as the Royals' walk rate as a team is on the pitching side, it basically the only thing keeping them out of last place is the fact that Zack Greinke, has walked less than 1 batter per 9 innings this season. But the one thing I really wanted to talk about with Zack Greinke is, this might sound insane. I've had this. I had this hot take like a year or two ago on Twitter.
I'll be the judge of
it's a hot take. Go on.
Just real quick before you get to the hot take, because I don't want to move too far away from this. Can I see your Ricky Bones and raise you a Bob Tewksbury?
Oh, well, Bob Tewksbury was the master, but Bob Tewksbury was actually he might actually be a better comp for what Zack Greinke's trying to do, because Tewksbury could do it year after year because he didn't walk anybody. I think there was a year he walked like 20 guys in like 218 innings or something. Insane.
I'm looking at the year 1992. At the age of 31, he went 16-5 with a 2.16 for the Cardinals through 233 innings, gave up 217 hits, walked 20, struck out 91.
Yeah, he was amazing. But
third in the Cy Young Award. Third in the Cy Young.
20 walks, 233 innings. That's almost exactly the walk rate that Greinke has right now, by the way. And if you can maintain that for a full season,
right,
with a great infield defense, which he has, and actually, I mean, Michael Taylor gives a great outfield defense. At least Michael Taylor saved him a home run the other day. I don't think Greinke's going to have a 2.16 ERA. He did that already in a Royals uniform. I don't think he's going to match that, but he could be an effective starter.
So and by the way, I had Bob Tewksbury on my team that year.
I figured that's why you remembered.
Oh yeah, I remembered him. I did have Jose Rio and I think Greg Maddux that year also. So I was getting some Ks elsewhere. But is it possible that what Greinke's done is because guys are so geared to launch it, and there's so many hard throwing guys because even this is down for Zack. It's almost like Zack is enjoying this. Right. And he's like, well, let's see how far I can take this. Is it possible that dynamic is magnifying his ability to pitch this way? Because nobody else, there were more guys that were Bob Tewksburying it back in the day than there are now.
Right. Well, this is why I say he's a delightful anomaly, in that if any other pitcher in baseball who had numbers like this and somebody claimed that, oh, he's just not trying to strike anybody out, my BS detector would go off immediately. I'd be like, no, I've heard that before. I've heard pitch to contact. That's why, we're not getting strikeouts. No, almost invariably when a pitcher is not striking out guys, it's because he can't miss bats, not because he's purposely trying to hit bats. But if anybody could be that guy, I mean, Zack Greinke 2 years ago, it was the pandemic season. It was only 67 innings. He had 67 strikeouts. I mean, he had a strikeout rate of 9 per 9 innings 2 years ago. That was a little higher than it had been. But I mean, I'm looking here since 2017, 9.6, 8.6, 8.1, 9.0, and then last year's 6.3. That was sort of the one warning flag in his numbers. He's 38 years old now. His velocity, actually, I think his velocity last year was slightly higher than the year before. I mean, he doesn't throw in the 90s anymore. His average fastball is like 89 to 90, which is slow for starting, for any pitcher in the major leagues. But that level, 3 to 4 miles an hour below major league average, is the level that you would expect a crafty veteran starter in the late 30s to pitch at and to succeed with if they do everything else well. So it wasn't worrisome to me. So his strikeout rate being this low this year, it almost seems like too much of a drop to be explained by his stuff suddenly getting worse.
Right.
I do think there's some of that. I do think he looks at the rest of this team, and it's a bunch of guys who throw really hard and don't always know where it's going. He looks at his bullpen, and he's got guys like Josh Stomon in there throwing 98, and but not necessarily having any idea where their pitches are going. And he's like, you know what, this team, you need a change of pace. We know that with hitters, seeing a pitcher with a different repertoire from one plate appearance to the next really limits their offense. And the more times you see a pitcher in the same pitcher in the same game, the better hitters hit. And so having that, I mean, there's a lot of evidence. For instance, we never see it anymore, but knuckleball pitchers, one of the hidden advantages of a knuckleball pitcher is that the hitters that face a knuckleball pitcher are messed up for the next day. The performance of hitters the day after they have to face a knuckleballer is, it's subtle but an unmistakable decline in their performance, which means a knuckleball pitcher in your rotation actually might give you another win or 2 wins a season just on what he does for the guy who pitches the next day. So I think there is some of that with Zack Greinke. And then again, the defense, he's letting his infield field a ton of ground balls, and it's working for him.
Is there reason to believe that that Zack Greinke, I mean, because one of the stats, I mean, it's not the high level analytics that are out there, but I think WHIP, walks plus hits divided by innings pitched, is one of the best indicators of a pitcher. I also think you need to strike out, at least a 2-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. It needs 3-to-1, much better, 4-to-1. Okay, now we're really getting somewhere. All those different things that kind of go into this. Right now, Greinke's got 7 strikeouts, 3 walks. That's frightening. Okay. But he's not giving up hits, right? Usually that would come with, in 28 innings, like 31, 32, 33, 34 hits.
Well, he gave up 10 hits today in 5 1/3, and yet he only gave up 2 runs. He got out of a bases loaded jam,
And that's where I'm going with it. He did have a season high 3 strikeouts too, though. Let's keep in mind.
Yeah, he had 4. I looked it up. 4. He had 4 earlier this season. Those are the only 2 starts. Those are the only 2 starts all season where he struck out more than 1 batter.
Okay.
Which again, it almost, when you have like 4 out of 6 starts where you've had 0 or 1 strikeouts, and yet you're effective, this seems to be a deliberate change of some sort.
Well, in 2015, when Zack Greinke should have won his 2nd Cy Young, which I thought was robbery, that he didn't get it. He led the league in WHIP. It was .844. This year, it's .964. I mean, that's an indicator that he can keep it going. But my question to you is, and I don't think he would sign on, but if you could get Zack to go ahead and add 2 more years onto his deal, would you do it right now? If you could say, listen, we got you at, what's he at, 13 now? We'll give you 2 for 30, 14 and 16. Would you do it as the Royals?
I would, but I'm probably more biased in favor of Zack Greinke than maybe any other player on the planet right now, just in terms of what he's done over the last 20 years. I'm a huge fan of this. I wish the Royals had been able to sign him to a 2-year deal originally. My concern, I would give him 1 year in a heartbeat, another year. 2, if it turns out that he's just been kind of lucky and he starts to fall apart, then you really got an albatross there. My concern at this point is, from the perspective of keeping him around long term, because my hope when he signed and some of the comments he made, I was really hopeful that he might just sign 1-year deals with the Royals for the next 3 or 4 years until he loses it. He's just going to have a very nice, graceful ease into retirement as a member of the Royals, as long as they are somewhat competitive. And my concern is, at 9 and 15, I mean, this is the worst possible thing that could happen. Is Zack Greinke really going to want to sign up for this again? Is he really going to want to fall for the promises that this team is ready to contend again? He already asked out of town one time when he had no faith in them, and he doesn't have to ask out. He can just leave, and that's it.
Well, and that's my point is, one, if you were the Royals, would you do it? Then there's the question of, if you were Zack, would you do it? And my answer is no. Like, to me, what he's doing this year proves that, there should be a contender that says, okay, we'll give you $14 million to be our 5th starter on 1-year deals. To me, I got to be honest with you. I don't know how he's here now. I really don't. I don't know.
The Royals do not deserve Zack Greinke. I mean, they just don't. And I thought maybe they would prove that they do, and they've shown once again they don't deserve to have a guy who gets so much out of his talent. And the story of the Royals so far this season is they're not converting talent into results. I think there is talent here. I think they're not doing a good job of getting results from it.
Ned Yost, when I talked to him last, which I think was, I don't know, it was around an anniversary or something. It was after it in either this past off season or it was, last year or sometime. And he started talking about Greinke. And when they went to Zach and were trying to sign him, and he's like, I'm not signing. And in fact, they weren't trying to sign him. He called them and said, I ain't coming to spring training. You better trade me. Right. Like, so the whole Alcides Escobar. And then Ned Yost talked about how he and Dayton tried to change his mind. Okay. Which is, and I said this at the time after we got done with the conversation and Curtis and I were reacting to it. I said, that's a little scary because what appears to have been the most strategic and best executed part of the Royals regime was in reality Zack Greinke just saying, no. And then them scrambling and, to their credit, getting a gold mine of a deal for Zack Greinke, right? But that scared the hell out of me that, the grand plan of flipping your need, flipping your biggest resource for things that you need was not it. I mean, that wasn't it at all, right? The reality was they were going to pressing on with no shortstop and no center fielder. And to me, as I watch Zack Greinke today, I'm like, will they move Zach at the deadline if they can get pieces for him now? I don't know, because I don't think they wanted to move him the time they did move him, and it's what actually launched him towards a world championship.
Yeah, it's sort of the story of the Royals that how that came to be, where the Royals do an amazing job of improvising, but the actual plan B, they have a great plan B. The plan A is what sucked. The plan A was, let's just keep this guy around and hope that we can improve by 30 games, in the next 2 seasons before his contract is up. It was almost as if Zack Greinke understood what was in the best interests, the best long-term interests of the organization, better than the organization did, right? And yes, he wanted out of town, but he did the Royals an enormous favor by asking to be traded. And yes, they executed it well, but they should have been the ones instigating that. Yes, I 100% agree. And look, I think that this season, if the Royals are 30 games out in July or whatever it's going to be, yeah, they're going to trade him. But here's the thing.
How can you say
they're
that?
not going to wait till July?
By the way, how can that come out of your mouth? You said it so matter-of-factly, like it's so definitive that they will trade him.
Because they do trade guys in the last year of their contract when they have no playoff potential whatsoever. The problem is, what a savvy organization would do would be looking to trade him now.
Yeah. Like
we've seen teams that have made trade that are clearly not in contention, trading a soon to be an impending free agent in May and getting, if you're, like you said, a contender, the value of Zack Greinke is not in doing great in the playoffs. He's not, he's not the type of pitcher that moves the needle that much in October, because he's not an ace. He's going to be like a number 3 guy. Where his value is he takes the ball every fifth day. He gives you 5 or 6 innings. He's going to give you 180 to 200 innings, which in modern baseball is incredible. And so if you're trying to get to the playoffs, you're actually a team that is looking to win 85 to 90. The Dodgers are not looking for Zack Greinke. It's going to be a team that is on the cusp. He has immense value, but he's going to have twice as much value today as he will at the end of July. And they won't move him until then.
Can I disagree with you on the Dodgers? Maybe they won't, but they should, because you're right. Maybe you don't need him, and they've got the kind of pitching depth like Buehler, Kershaw, Buehler, Urias are going to be the guys that they want to throw out there. But you usually need a fourth, to go through the playoffs. And to your point about talking about the knuckleballer and what Zack Greinke isn't he exactly what you want to put in between those live arms? Is junk ball Zach in the middle of that? Like if you're the San Francisco Giants, who, everybody goes there. First of all, Zach might throw 97 again if he went to San Francisco, because everybody else does.
Well, we have something to talk about there. We'll get to that.
But between Rodon and have Greinke right before you got to see Rodon throw the way he does.
I think the Giants, right? The Giants absolutely are the kind of the reason I say with the Dodgers, I think the Dodgers are confident they're going to make the playoffs no matter what they do, and they should be. The Giants, despite their incredible season last year, they're I think in 4th place right now in the NL West. Making the playoffs is going to be a challenge for them. I think Greinke in San Francisco would be phenomenal, and we know this because the Giants picked up a guy a lot less accomplished than Zack Greinke from the Royals like 2 months ago in Jake Junis. I think it's time for our soon-to-be weekly Jake Junis update. You may have seen that after the two relief outings we talked about, where he threw 10 shutout innings combined.
Yes.
Got the start today, his first start as a member of the San Francisco Giants, and threw 5 innings, allowed 2 runs. I believe he got the win. Not that that really matters, but he pitched, a very good start out of the rotation. Now it's not just, well, in the bullpen his stuff plays up. Well, I guess he's thrown 5 innings in all 3 of those outings. But Jake Junis is a really good pitcher. I thought, I could not figure out why he could never put it together with the Royals. I was certain the minute the Giants got him that they would get the best out of him. And now it's three outings, 15 innings into his Giants career, and he's already showing, more than he's ever shown with the Royals. I don't think he's necessarily throwing harder. I'm looking looking here. His average fastball velocity this season is actually 0.4 miles an hour less than last year. His slider, no change there.
He's throwing 5 innings though, and some of what you're reading there was when the Royals sent him back to the bullpen, and so he was probably humping up on it. But everything you're saying, I
don't see his stuff is better, but the way he's mixing it up, the Giants, they take a pitcher and they figure out what works for him, and they make them throw that pitch more. So I suspect, probably should have gotten this data ready ahead of time, but his slider, that slider of his is what is such a phenomenal pitch. I'm almost certain they're having him throw it a lot more. All right, here we go. Slider percentage. The percentage of pitches, and this doesn't include today's outing, so it's a small sample size, but the percentage of pitches he's thrown that were sliders this year, 55% of his pitches are sliders. And that, in the old days, by old days, I mean 10 years ago, it was almost unheard of for a pitcher to throw anything other than his fastball more than half the time.
Right.
But you're seeing it now. I mean, even the Royals, I think Amir Garrett, coming out of the bullpen from the left side, he's throwing his slider like 70% of the time. But more and more, you're seeing teams say, this is your best pitch. Even if it's not a fastball, throw it all the time. Even if you throw your fastball 10, 20% of the time, that's enough that they can't just sit on your slider. Throw it more. They can't hit it. And that the Giants have done that, and they've probably done some other things too. And Jake Junis is rocking.
But that speaks to me, and not to bring it back to Cal Eldred, whether it's Cal Eldred or whether it's the development side coming up. I remember the first guy that this really was burnt into my brain was I used to have a weekly conversation with Chiefs All-Pro guard Brian Waters. And, the Chiefs weren't very good at that time. They was on the downslope of the Dick Vermeil, or maybe we were already into Herm Edwards and coming down. Anyway, and they were struggling, and we were talking about how the offense was struggling. And he's like, listen, there's no, and, I said, hey, the fans want different play calling. He said, look, somebody else has got to do that. You call play in the huddle, we all are going to execute it, because as soon as you start freelancing, it all goes to hell in a handbasket. He said, the one thing you want from a coach is you want a coach that's going to make you better. And if you find a coach that will make you better, and in this case, he was talking about a play caller, then you will run through a brick wall for him. But when you have a coach that you're not really sure what he's doing, it screws everything up. And that's where they really are right now, right? Like Jakob Junis went to Alec Lewis had a great piece on him working with his brother who had, found the gospel of analytics and spin rates and all that. And he went to work and it looked good. It looked great in spring training. And then it fell apart with the Royals. I mean, will this be the coup de grace if he goes 12-5 as the 4th or 5th starter for the Giants? Is this it? Is this the wake-up call? Is that a call that even, forget about whether or not J.J. Picola answers the phone or Dayton Moore, that call goes to John Sherman and he goes, okay, right? Like, if you won't do it, I will. And I don't think he's going to go fire Cal Eldred or fire the minor league pitching coordinators. He'll fire the whole lot of them and say that you're not making changes, like you all got to go.
Will it? I don't know. Should it?
Should it?
100%.
Okay.
100%. I mean, Jake Junis, he's a Giant. The Royals released him. I mean, he had 2 more years under club control. He was released or designated for assignment. I mean, they let him go. They could have him right now. I don't think he's making a ton of money. Obviously, he was released. He's probably making, let me see, I think 1.5 million, something, 1.75 million. And, he's going to be a quality starter. And meanwhile, the Royals have three starting pitchers right now that I think are reliable, in Greinke, Keller, and Daniel Lynch. if they had a fourth starter, if Jakob Junis was their fourth starter instead of Chris Bubich or Carlos Hernandez, where would they be? I mean, a much better position. And what you talk about, like, running through a brick wall for a coach that makes you better. I think it may even apply more so in baseball in the sense that for pitchers, conviction is so important when you're on the mound. I think it was, I want to say it was Tom House, may have been another legendary pitching coach, that said something like the wrong pitch thrown with conviction is always going to be better than the right pitch thrown without. I mean, you see a guy who's out there, who's timid, who's nibbling. Those guys never succeed. If you are out on the mound and you don't have faith that you have been put in a position to succeed, then you're not going to throw the pitch that is called for in that situation with 100% conviction. And maybe you're going to try and hit the edges of the zone instead of throwing it right down the middle and trust your stuff or whatever it is. I think in baseball with pitchers, success breeds success. Jake Junis went to the Giants. He was released, so he could have gone to anybody, right? I mean, he had at least the autonomy to decide what organization to sign as a minor league free agent with. He went to the Giants for a reason. He saw what they did last year, and he's like, yeah, I want to be on that team. I mean, we see it a little bit with the Chiefs being that on the football side, where, if there's a player out there, a veteran who wants to win one last time, or just, a undrafted free agent wide receiver, it's like, I want to go work with the best.
Yeah.
If they're going to make me the best. And Jake Junis chose that, and he chose wisely.
I love your point. I actually think the Chiefs are the bad comp because I don't think anybody actually gets better with the Chiefs. I think guys do want to come play. You're right. It's an attractive place. They want to come play with Patrick Mahomes and ride his coattails because they know he's going to get there. The Giants make you better, right? Sammy Watkins didn't get better with the Chiefs, but Cole Hardman doesn't appear to be any different. Even being around all that, like, it's not like Demarcus Robinson became a big guy. Like if the Chiefs were the San Francisco Giants, like Sammy Watkins would have come here and caught 1,500 balls and 20 touchdowns, right? He'd have turned into Randy Moss. That's literally like in so much of the world today is a football mindset. That's literally what the Giants do. They take guys that were never worse or maybe showed a little something, and they put them third in the Cy Young voting. I mean, it's remarkable. And again,
I can't turn this into a football podcast. I'm not going to be able to compete with you on that score. Right. I will say, you look at the Chiefs. I mean, would Trey Smith have been a starting right guard from day one on another team? Would Creed Humphrey been an all-pro center? I don't know. I mean, the thing is, the problem is in football, with the lack of, we don't have the statistical data we have in baseball to be able to definitively say, here's this guy's stats with one team, this guy's stats with a second team, he got better. You can do, like, we have a way to quantify it in baseball such that we can look at the Giants and the guys who just took massive leap forward. We can't, it's hard to do that in football, I guess. So maybe the Chiefs aren't the best comp, but the point is, winning organizations breed more win. I mean, to me, the comp, the standard in baseball for many years has been the St. Louis Cardinals. Right? Because the Cardinals, much as I hate to admit it, they're always like, if you are a college senior, 22-year-old hitter who's projected to go in the 7th round of the draft, you should be on your knees every single night praying that the St. Louis Cardinals draft you. Because if they draft you somehow from, Alan Craig to Matt Carpenter, now Tommy Edman, they turn these guys into tremendous hitters, major league baseball players that are around for years. And I'm trying to think of a Royals having anybody in that frame. Maybe David DeJesus was a 4th rounder. I guess he turned into a good player, but I'm just trying to think, like, the Cardinals are legendary for that. And it's not just, we identify players. No, they're developing those guys. The Giants are doing it with cast-offs. The Dodgers have been doing it for, they'll draft a guy in the 2nd round. A year later, he's a top 100 prospect. It's like, did they identify his talent, or did they just develop him? And the Royals, as we see over and over again, they're not developing their guys.
Along that front, Ryan O'Hearn is still a Kansas City Royal, and Vinnie Pasquantino is not. Does this say more about Vinnie Pasquantino that they listen? I floated this theory that the season's not going the way they want at the major league level. They're looking at it going, no, we misjudged it. Witt's bat's slow. It's not coming around. Salvi's starting to look a little bit old. Not sure that he's guessing. Not sure that's coming around. Bobby Witt Jr. is good. But, like, there have been a lot of guys that are like the #1 prospect, and they end up being 17 and 80 guys. And I don't think that's the case with Bobby Witt Jr. right now. I still think there's lots and lots of ceiling, and I still think he's going to hit more than 20 home runs this year, and hopefully develop into a 30 plus, maybe 40 home run. Like Alex Bregman is the guy that I'm hoping he's going to be. When it's all said and done. But they're looking at going, no, this doesn't add up. And for the first time, maybe there's some fire on some people's jobs. And if you can't sell the club in Kauffman Stadium, you better be able to sell the clubs in the minor leagues. You better be able to sell that the guys coming are going to fix it. And is it possible that O'Hearn, hey, the fans are out on O'Hearn, it's fine, he can strike out. But if we bring up Pasquantino and he bats 187 with a 288 or even a 305 on base and a 397 slug, that's not the answer. And that's what we think he is. Like, at what point does this become an indictment? And I don't think it's the case, because you've pointed it out. He continues. I think it's now 19 walks and 13 strikeouts on the year. The batting average is 260, but the on base is 380 something. Last time I looked. Like, but do we have to be concerned that the reason Emmanuel Rivera is up and Ryan O'Hearn continues to have a job? Like, I love when I said, bring up Pasquantino. It's like, well, the 40 man. Don't anybody ever tell me the 40 man again on a team that is 8 and or whatever the hell they are now. What are they now?
9 and 16.
Whatever it is. Don't tell me the 40 man. That's a.
But you know what? I'll tell you. It is partly the 40 man. Let me address what you're saying. Look, and I agree with you. This is crazy, but to me, the Royals not bringing up Pasquantino is not about Pasquantino. It's because the fundamental, the original sin here is bringing back Ryan O'Hearn. And one of the things that drives me crazy about the Royals is they make decisions like common sense is such an important part of running a sports organization. I mean, you think about, like, I don't know, every draft pick the New York Jets have ever made or whatever. Like, you've seen that montage of like 30 years of the New York Jets first round pick being booed at Madison Square Garden because the fans were like, we've never heard of this guy. Why are you taking him? And guess what? It doesn't work. Organizations sometimes make decisions which an objective, semi-informed fan, not even an expert, can be like, why are they doing that? And you know what? Usually when it's that obvious, usually the organization has made a mistake. We talk about, why are the Royals not considering a new pitching coach instead of Cal Eldred? They brought him back. Has that worked out for anybody? No. But the one decision to me that was probably more mystifying than bringing back Cal Eldred is, why did they tender Ryan O'Hearn a contract? I mean, I feel at this point, I feel bad for Ryan O'Hearn. I mean, it's not his fault. Like, yeah, of course here's a major league job. Here's $1.3 million. Of course he's going to take it. He had an incredible rookie season of 44 games in 2018. And it was incredible in part because he never hit as well as he did as a rookie in the minor leagues. Like, he's a guy, but in the minor leagues, never had a season remotely as impressive as what Vinnie Pasquantino has done each of the last 2 years. But he got hot for 44 games at the most unbelievable time, the most perfect time to establish himself in the major leagues. And nothing he has done since has changed the Royals' mind. From 2019 through 2021, a 3-year, 231-game sample. So, 5 times larger than his rookie season. He hit 205, 280, 358 as a first baseman / designated hitter. And he was, not particularly young when he came up. So he's already 28 years old. He had his age 27 season last year, and he hit 225 and with a 268 on base percentage. What is it about this guy's track record? Other than 44 games 4 years ago, there was nothing in this man's track record which said this guy belongs on a major league roster. He was old. I'll raise you the fact that he was old for his league levels coming up, and he was striking out 3 times as much as he was walking. Yeah. I mean, the home runs, nothing screams like, don't look at this. Look at this, right? Like, yes, he's punishing mistakes on guys that'll never see the big leagues. But the quantity of strikeouts say that he at that level, at that age, right? And I've always said this, I'm not talking about his swing. I'm not talking about mechanics. After 30 years of playing fantasy baseball and staring at numbers, I know what looks like a big leaguer coming up. That is not it. And it's good that you bring up 30 years of playing fantasy, because I'm going to bring up one of the legendary fantasy rookies of all time, because I was comparing Ryan O'Hearn to him as a rookie, and that was Kevin Moss. Remember Kevin Moss?
Yeah.
One of the
Yankees,
all-time, because it was happened in New York. He was playing for the Yankees. Another guy was a better hitter in the minor leagues than O'Hearn was. A decent prospect, but was already 25 years old when he got to the major leagues. And then in 79 games, hit 21 home runs. I think he had like 20 of those in like his first 6 weeks or something. It was just like the biggest sensation in baseball. But all the warning signs were there. This guy's too old. He strikes out too much. He's just on a hot stretch. But like Kevin Moss for a winter was like hailed by the New York media as like the next superstar, and was an average hitter, below average player overall for like 3 seasons and was out of baseball. Ryan O'Hearn is the second coming of Kevin Moss, except not quite as good as Kevin Moss. And they brought him back. And again, could it have worked? I guess it could have if the Royals knew what they're doing. He's 1 for 16 on the season. Okay, it's only 16 plate appearances, but at some point, results should matter. And meanwhile, you have Vinnie Pasquantino in the minor leagues. And the thing about Pasquantino, I'm a lover of statistics, as you know. And there was always something beautiful about Pasquantino's numbers last year that I really loved. There's a symmetry there. He had 64 strikeouts. He had 64 walks. And in today's game, that's unbelievable for anybody to have that, right? He also had 64 extra base hits. So walks and strikeouts, that's impressive. But I mean, Nicky Lopez had more walks and strikeouts before they called him up to the minor leagues. Like bat control, plate discipline, that's impressive. To have that and power, now you've got me interested. Now you have my attention. Well, this year, he has 13 strikeouts. He has 13 extra base hits and 19 walks, as you pointed out. He actually has more walks than strikeouts, but then he has as many extra base hits as strikeouts. That's 2 years in a row. That is unusual. To be able to hit for that much power without missing, swinging and missing a lot. I think Vinnie Pasquantino, I don't think he's going to be a star. I think he could be a league average first baseman.
With the bat.
With the bat.
So,
and I think that has value.
And of course it has value, because they're not getting that right now. That's
exactly.
Carlos Santana's down, and they're definitely not getting it when O'Hearn's in there. But, and I'll have to look, and maybe you'll pull Hunter Dozier's career splits. I don't know his right-left splits. But to me, this seems pretty easy. Like, you don't have to mess around giving $1 million and change to Ryan O'Hearn, and you could move Carlos Santana, eat the money, and send him wherever just to get some live 24-year-old arm in A-ball and see if you can do something with him, which we know they wouldn't because of all the reasons we've stated before. But anyway, the thing about Pasquantino is a 941 OPS against righties and 864 against lefties. Now, generally speaking, again, 30 years of staring at numbers and what it means, that will become more pronounced when he goes up against better pitching. But 864, this is not a guy that's just crushing the platoon side of the ball. And so when that backs up, his numbers are really going to fall off a cliff. He does okay against left-handers. But even if you don't want to do that, platoon him with Hunter Dozier, who, by the way, you already signed and said, we believe, not to a big deal, but you gave him money and said, we believe that this guy's a productive player. Right there's your first base platoon. I mean, even if you start here, and we want to wait the 12, 13, 14 days it takes to steal that first year on Pasquantino. Fine. Hunter Dozier mans it for 2 weeks. And then
at this point that we're past that anyway. And I mean, when a guy's 24 years old, I don't think you're really worried about.
But I'm saying that should have been the plan in the offseason, to your point about why Ryan O'Hearn was back.
Yeah, potentially, yes.
I mean, there was an obvious, easy answer.
Well, I think they were also looking at Nick. I mean, the other, of course, going into the season, Nick Prado. Like, even if Vinnie Pasquantino wasn't in this organization, I would say, why is Ryan O'Hearn here? Nick Prado, we haven't talked about him. He's, got hit in the head, unfortunately, with the pitch. He's on the 7-day IL right now. But Nick Prado is like the better prospect than Vinnie Pasquantino, probably.
But I don't know that he actually is.
That's a separate issue. I could make a very, hot takey case to trade Nick Prado, or even if traded him this winter when his value was at its highest, and going with Pasquantino. But the point is, there's nowhere in this equation is there room for Ryan O'Hearn. And
we know what's going to happen. To me, it is almost like it's the curse of Albert Pujols, or it's the Whit Merrifield curse. Like oh, we didn't think we had anything in Witt, and look what he did. So we're never going to let that happen again. So they don't trust their own judgment, and everybody. So now almost 29-year-old Ryan O'Hearn's going to continue to get at bats. 26-and-a-half-year-old Emmanuel Rivera is going to get at bats, which backs up 24-plus-year-old Vinnie Pasquantino, who at least won't be 25 until the end of the year, which will then back up Nick Pratto because they're terrified. Like, they're amazing. They managed to not use AAA as a development stage, but then also not get anyone to the big leagues quickly. Like, yeah, I don't even know how you do that.
Well, and the issue is the Royals knew going into this winter that they had Nick Pratto, who, to their credit, they had revitalized his career and was a top 100, top 50 maybe prospect. And they had Vinnie Pasquantino, who was really converting a lot of doubters. He was an 11th round pick, not a guy who was on many radars prior to last season. But the people who saw him perform, we're talking about his statistics, and they're great. But scouts were like, I mean, this guy's not a star, but probably could be a league average guy. Like, they knew they had all this. They also knew that they needed to keep DH warm for Salvador Perez at least 40, 50 times a year, right? We already saw them trying Nick Pratto in like that outfield. Like, they had to get creative. At some point, could they have been persuaded to, hey, maybe this is the time to be transactional? We've heard about maybe you can't have too much pitching. You could argue you can't have too many shortstops because you can always move a shortstop somewhere. But if there's one position on the field where maybe you can have too much, you could probably have too many first basemen.
Yes,
there's just not a place to put them. And these are both guys who project to be starting first base in the major leagues. I have to assume that the Frankie Montas rumors about the Royals trading with the A's, that one of those two guys would have been in a Frankie Montas trade. And maybe that, their plan was to go into the season, and if they're in contention, they'll trade one of those guys to get pieces for the second half. Now, that's not the case, but the point is they have to do something. They don't have space for all of these guys. They're DHing MJ Melendez right now because they want to play him too, and you've got Salvador Perez. So what do? I don't want to see Nick Pratto playing right field. I don't want to see MJ Melendez playing left field. That's not a good use of their talents.
How much does this scare you? I got word from someone in Oakland that the A's said the Royals are not willing to do what it takes to get Montas. And by the way, neither is anybody else, to the credit. So maybe the A's are asking for too much, but generally speaking, that's not the case. Right? When the A's make deals, it's not like, oh my God, they got the number 1, 2, and 4 prospect in it. It's like, oh, they got the number 4, 16, and 27. You're kind of like, they make those deals, and you're always kind of like,
yeah, but
is Billy Beane kind of losing it? Like,
you're talking to the wrong guy, because you can say that about the A's, but when the A's make trades with the Royals, just those words are sending me, I mean, I think of Johnny Damon from Mark Ellis. I think of the Neffy Perez trade. I mean, I did a list for The Athletic a few years back on the 20 greatest trades in Royals history, and I started also with the 10 worst trades in Royals history. And I think 3 of those 10 worst trades were all made with Billy Beane in like a 5-year stretch.
Yeah.
So to me, the words the Royals have traded with Oakland just scares the hell out of me.
Valid, and I get it. But as a general manager, you can't be like, well, we'll trade with 2018.
Sure. And I mean, they did make the Ben Zobrist trade was with Oakland, and that was one of the all-time win-win deals in modern Major League history. So, I mean, they can do it.
Yeah. My point is just that, if the Royals weren't willing to do, like, if they really thought, and I do think they thought this was going to be a better year, they wouldn't have given $13 million to Zack Greinke. Right, I think
they wouldn't have tried to get Frankie Montas. Absolutely,
exactly. I think they're right now going, "What the hell has happened here?" Right, and so to me, like, if you were there, what I'm going to try to find out, but what the hell kept you from making that deal? Right, because then this team does look a lot better. But
at this point, I'm almost thankful they didn't, because you know what? If they make that trade, then maybe they're 11-13. Is they really going anywhere? Probably not, and they probably give up a boatload of talent.
No,
and he's going to be a free agent.
No, you're missing my greater overall point. The A's listen, just take they take Pasquantino, Drew Parrish, and Ben Caderna. Right, like those are the deals, and I'm looking at
if that could have gotten him, then yes.
But that's what I'm saying.
I don't know if they did that. I don't know if that gets him.
That's because we look at the Royals' histories and we go, oh my, for good reason that you just pointed out, like, oh my God, those are all disasters. But I'm telling you, every time they're in this rebuild mode and they make these trades, and I go look it up, and I immediately go to, let's get the the prospect book out and see where it was. And I'm like, they got number 4, number 12, and number 26. Like it's never 1, 2, and 4. That's my point. Like if it's like, well, if they thought they were getting Bobby Witt Jr., MJ Melendez, and Kyle Isbell, they got another thing coming. It's never that. It's never that. They make all these deals, and again, Montas hasn't.
Well, the reason I'll say it is simply because we don't know what it would take to get Montas because they didn't trade him. So whatever they wanted, nobody was. You want to make an argument. You want to argue something. Argue why didn't the Royals try and trade for Sean Manaea, like I just mentioned? Because Sean Manaea they did trade to the Padres for a package of like sort of interesting, lower level guys, but the industry was sort of surprised at how little he brought. I think he's only 1 season, so this is his only year under contract. To me, the fact that they were interested in Montas tells me that they were thinking more about 2023 than 2022. But to me, it's like if you're trading for a guy with 2 seasons and you only really want him for the second one of those 2 seasons, you know what? Just wait a year because like you're wasting half of the value of that guy. Like you don't trade for Frankie Montas unless you want to win now. And, if they traded for Sean Manaea, it would have been a lower price tag. And yes, it meant they would have had to try to win this year, but I would have respected that attempt. Trading for a guy and being like, well, we're hoping he'll be a source of inspiration for our young pitchers. He'll be there to help them, guide them along this year. And then next year we'll be ready to win. You only have him for 2 years. You paid for 2 years, but you're only actually getting 1 year that's going to seriously be in contention. To me, that's a waste. So at this point, I'm happy they didn't trade for Frankie Montas, but the point you're making, I agree. They should be more aggressive. To their credit, what you're describing is basically the Andrew Benintendi trade, which I will say, I think they've done well there. They traded some guys who could have come back to burn them. None of those guys at this point look like they're going to burn them. And they got a league average, maybe slightly above league average left fielder for 2 seasons. And there's a good chance, we talk about trading Greinke, if they're not going to sign Benintendi, they should be looking to trade him pretty soon too, because you trade him now in May or June, you can get a lot of talent for an above average everyday player for 100.
What are they going to ask for? Major league ready guys. And Benintendi is not a 1 year removed from a Cy Young award the way Zack Greinke was when they moved him, and he doesn't have 2 years under contract the way Zack Greinke did. And so what you're going to get is Emmanuel Rivera in a different colored jersey and some other reliever that's had a couple, you'll get the, what you get? You'll get the Jefferson. What was his name? That was in that Greinke deal.
Jeremy Jeffress. Yes.
Jeremy Jeffress.
A good reliever, potentially good reliever. Right?
You'll get Jeremy Jeffress and you'll get Alcides Escobar. Maybe.
I was like, if you get Alcides Escobar, you might, I know. You get a guy who might turn into Escobar.
Now's Alcides Escobar.
You'll get 35. Hey, so I could just see the Royals trading with the Nationals and getting Alcides Escobar back. Major league ready talent.
But you know what? Escobar today, he can't play. Right? Again, I want to go back to the numbers I gave you early. 29th in homers, 28th in walks. Right? Like,
well, the Royals have built their lineup around Alcides Escobar types for 40 years. I mean, that's their philosophy, and that's why I do wonder on some level if this front office has the capability of adjusting to the reality of baseball today.
So listen, should Nick Pratto? Let's dig deeper on this because Maryland, he's on what would be a 200+ strikeout pace if you were in a big league uniform. He's like, what scares the hell out of me is that like what his value is. He's projecting to be a Doug Minkiewicz, right? That's what he's looking like. If he's as good as the glove is supposed to be,
I think the idea is he's more power. He's Doug Minkiewicz defensively, I mean average wise, but that with 30 home run power.
Listen, they say he's that kind of defender. I want to see it with my own eyes.
Fine, that's fine. But I think if he hits with the Doug Minkiewicz power, that would be a disappointment at this point.
I remember when I was sold on Kerry Robinson supposedly being a tremendous center fielder, and then I watched him climb the wall for the ball to land on the warning track. Okay, so I want to see it before I go all in on what kind of defender he is. But this is the point where you have to. They're running him around the outfield because Pasquantino can't. So the worst first baseman is going to play, so a bad outfielder can run out there.
This is what I'm saying. Like, why would you hurt your defense at 2 positions to get these guys on the field when you could trade them. You could actually, there are other ways of adjusting your talent, and other general managers do it all the time, but apparently you can't do it in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Anyway, the strikeout thing with Nick Pratto does worry me, because the strikeout rate this year, I mean, his overall numbers, his overall numbers are only down a little bit from last year, and it's only been a few weeks. I'm not that worried, but his strikeout rate is like 34% of plate appearances. And you can barely get by with that in the major leagues if you're doing everything else. I mean, that's 190, 200 strikeout a season pace. But 34 strikeouts in the strikeout rate in AAA, that's 40% in the majors, and you cannot survive with the 40% strikeout rate. So I'm worried about that, and that's why there's no rush to promote him in my mind, because I'm worried he needs to get the strikeouts under control. Now, to the Royals' credit, he's the one of the elite guys. He's really the only guy I really worry about that. I mean, MJ Melendez has a lower strikeout rate. Pasquantino, we already talked about his strikeout rate. And I do want to point out Bobby Witt, because we haven't really talked much about him since he debuted, because he's just kind of in that meh, not playing really well, but not so badly that he worries us. We haven't brought him up. I do want to give him a shout out, because even as poor as his numbers are overall, and he's only got 3 walks in 95 plate appearances. So, you know he's inherited Royals disease, because he walked at a decent rate in the minor leagues, but it's an organization like, go out there and swing at everything, Bobby, and good things will happen. Well, they're not. But he only has 21 strikeouts in 95 plate appearances. That's a 22% strikeout rate in the majors, after he had a 23% strikeout rate in the minors last year. That to me is, and this is just his first month in the majors. He's not hitting well. He's adjusting. To me, that's actually a very good sign. He's already making adjustments. I mean, in his first week or two in the majors, I remember his swing and miss rate at sliders out of the zone was like 40%. He was swinging at too many sliders in the dirt. I mean, it's just classic Royals disease, but it was a problem. But we would hear from Royals optimists, don't worry. He struggled in Double-A for a few weeks last year before he really got it together. He has the ability to make those adjustments. And you know what? They might be right, because now in his last, 54 plate appearances, going back 13 games, he has 8 strikeouts. His strikeout rate's even lower if you take out the first 2 weeks of the season. To me, if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, Bobby Witt, I'm really not worried. His strikeout rate is fine. I knew he was fast. I didn't know he might be the fastest player in the major leagues. I mean, today he had an infield single, and his sprint speed at one point was 31.3 feet per second. 30 is considered elite. 31, I think his average sprint speed this year is #1 among everyday players in the major leagues. I knew he was fast. I don't think I was prepared for him to be the #1 player in baseball. So I think of like Alex Gordon's struggles as a rookie or whatever. If Alex Gordon was also like the fastest guy in the major leagues and could just beat out an infield hit twice a week, he would have had a much better rookie season. And I think the fact that Bobby Witt is making contact, and when he makes contact, he's so fast he can beat out a ground ball like he did today, that makes me optimistic that even at his worst, he's going to be a 250, 260 hitter.
We will always have plenty to talk about, because we've got a lot still left on the list that we haven't gotten to, but we always like to finish with the minor league minute. Rany, where would you like to focus the minor league minute today?
Well, the minor league minute is a moment of optimism in an hour that is otherwise.
It has been to this point, but
I'm trying to make it our moment of zen, a moment of optimism in an hour of pessimism. So this week, I do want to talk about a guy we haven't talked about a lot. He got off to a little bit of a slow start and has just been raking of late, and that's Michael Massey, who you may know the name. Was a 4th-round pick 3 years ago, was a top 10 in the organization prospect, I would say, coming in. Although a lot of
baseman for people who
don't know. second baseman out of college, out of Illinois. But a lot of prospect rankings had him more like top 15, even top 20. I saw there was some doubting his ability. He broke out last year, hit 289, slugged 531 in A-ball. He won a minor league Gold Glove, and I don't know exactly how that ranking works, so who votes on that, but that has to be a sign of some defensive prowess. You're considered the best defensive second baseman in the minor leagues. That combination, I think, is very appealing. But he's in Double-A now, and he's now in 25 games hitting .320 with a .368 on base and a .544 slugging. So he had an excellent season last year in A-ball. He's in Double-A, and he's hitting better than he did last year. His strikeout rate is under control. It's about 19-20%. He's left-handed. And Whit Merrifield may not be a starting everyday player in the major leagues, or at least not deserve to for much longer. So having a second baseman who can rake, who might be ready to come up by the end of the season, is quite appealing. And I do like Michael Massey a lot, and I do think he should be starting for this team in the next year or two.
He is 24.
He is 24. He's ready. Well, I mean, Whit Merrifield was 26 when he got to the majors. So.
Right. I'm just saying, he's being a college guy. He's not old yet. I mean, because he's obviously older.
He's not young. He's not a phenom.
He's not young. And he needs to finish off his time in Double-A by the midway point and get half the year at Triple-A for sure. And ideally, if that these numbers would continue to stay where they are right now, maybe even go up a little bit more and push his way into Triple-A. That would be great, because then you're looking at a guy that maybe can be coming up in August and really get those, get his feet wet on big leagues and be ready to step in and say, okay, we've got a guy who can play second base every day. Right.
Right after the Royals trade Whit Merrifield at the deadline for an enormous package of prospects, just like they planned all along.
So Massey at second, Nick Lofton in center, correct? That's coming next year. Like,
that's the hope, right?
I asked this question a couple of times this week to a couple of different people. I asked it to Jeff Passan. I don't know if you heard it, but I'll tell you Passan's answer after I get yours first. Can you squint and see how it comes together right now for the Royals?
I can squint and see it. Yes, I can, but I don't think I can as long as the coaching staff doesn't undergo massive upheaval. I cannot see them winning with Cal Elder as the pitching coach. I ultimately had that vote of confidence withdrawn from him over the winter. I just decided the Royals will never win anything with him, and they haven't proven me wrong yet. So
if it was time to make that move and Mike Matheny wouldn't make it, would you? Then you both go, because they're buds.
Yes, I mean I was not a fan of the Mike Matheny hiring, and he impressed me. And I think as a tactical manager, as a manager in the clubhouse, he has been perfectly fine. Which better than I expected. I give him credit. I think he made some of the mistakes he made in St. Louis that got him fired. I think he did do some self-reflection. I think he did sort of sand off the rough edges a little bit. And I don't think he's holding this team back with his managing. But if his loyalty to coaches that are not doing their job is keeping them employed, then he is holding the team back in that sense. And if that's what it has to take, I don't think he is this isn't Earl Weaver that you're letting go because you want to fire the pitching coach. Like, he's not. The Royals can replace Mike Matheny if that's what it takes.
Yeah, I think some difficult decisions. We've heard Jim Bowden say to us right before the season, before that offseason they traded for James Shields. He said it was time for the Royals to make a deal that hurts, right? And I think we're approaching that as well. It's getting harder to see what that deal is. It was pretty apparent what that deal looked like that year. There's still so many question marks in so many different spots, and I'm not sure what that is. But I think it's also time to make some decisions. Like, I think Ned Yost made a terrible mistake getting rid of Kevin Seitzer. All right.
I think it may still remain the worst decision of the Dayton Moore era is letting Kevin Seitzer. I'm so happy for him that he won in Atlanta.
Yes.
Won the World Series. It was one of the things I was happiest about with the Braves winning.
Yep.
But I did the research, even after he was gone, and other people have done research on hitting coaches. Very difficult subject to study is the influence of coaches. But like, Kevin Seitzer is at the top of like every analytical breakdown of you look at hitters before and after they work with a specific hitting coach. Kevin Seitzer is the closest thing to, like, we talked about Brent Strom, with on the pitching side. I think Kevin Seitzer is the closest guy to that in terms of a body of work over 15, 20 years. The Royals had him. They had Brent Strom at different times. Didn't work.
I do ask this question, and Terry's a fair point for Terry to put it up here. And again, if you're catching us on the podcast later, we stream live 10 o'clock Central Time on Sunday nights. And Terry said, if not Matheny, in the chat room, Terry said, if not Matheny, then who? And I don't have that name, and I'm not at Matheny's desk saying it's time for you to go. But I'm with Rany. I mean, I will listen. I landed Terry Bradshaw and Cal Eldred, but if it's not them, then it's problems in the minor leagues. I mean, I think some changes have to come, and I think I don't think it can wait till the off season, right? I think somebody has to be sacrificial. There has to be a statement sent through the organization that this isn't good enough, and when it's not good enough, people will be fired. But I do think, Terry, to your point, like, if Matheny stood in the way of making necessary changes. Who? I mean, I don't think that I don't have that answer right now, but
can I give you the answer that I always love to give?
Sure.
Which it's not really an answer now, but I find it absolutely hysterical. If you go back to when Tony Muser was fired, do you remember who was like number one on everybody's list? The Royals fans, there was a lot of rumors that he was interviewed for the job.
Who did they ultimately hire? And I'll tell you,
Tony Pena.
They hired Tony Pena. Buck Showalter was a
Buck
big name.
Showalter was the guy everybody wanted. They didn't hire him then. They got rid of Tony Pena, and because Buck Showalter has this amazing ability of being incredibly successful and then also being fired and being available for the Royals and was willing to consider the Royals. Like, that's the other thing. I want to say when Buddy Bell got hired, that Buck Showalter was also like passed over. Like, they have passed over Buck Showalter so many times.
I think,
and
I know Allard Baird was the guy who went all the way to the wire. It was Showalter, and then picked.
I think it was Pena and Showalter, and I think they came close, but ultimately picked Pena. You talk about a sliding doors moment for this organization. I do wonder if, when you consider how successful Buck Showalter is, and I bring him up, of course, because he would, the Royals could have hired him at any point. He's been out of the game again for a couple of years. He's not a young man anymore. The New York Mets hired him this winter,
and they're fantastic.
And the New York Mets, the LOL Mets, the star-crossed Mets, are coming in today 19-9. They have the greatest pitching staff around. Like,
without Strom, without Syndergaard.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're doing it without the guys that we thought would be good. They've got Tyler McGill in their rotation, Chris Bassett in their rotation. Managers matter. Coaches matter. And when the same guy moves around and his teams have shocking success wherever he goes, Buck Showalter has his playoff demons. I would not want him to be the manager in the playoffs because he'll leave Zach Britton in the bullpen, or he'll try and close out a series with, was it Jack McDowell back in '95? Like, he has a lot of playoff mistakes, but he gets you to the playoffs. Yeah. That guy got the Orioles to the playoffs like multiple times.
But it's not an option. It's not an option. So who still to go back and answer the question?
I'm just saying, I think there's some, like, Mike Matheny is not irreplaceable. There's somebody out there. The next Buck Showalter is out there somewhere. Right. But the Royals, they always go after the guy who's had an opportunity somewhere else and failed. And that doesn't mean it won't work. It worked with Ned Yost. I think Mike Matheny's a better manager now. But if we get to the point where Mike Matheny's job is on the line, you and I will come up with a list of names. I don't think we're at that point yet.
No, I would agree.
I just wanted to bring up Buck Showalter.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that the Royals came that close to hiring him, they had Kevin Seitzer, they had Brent Strom, they had the opportunity to hire Buck Showalter, they had Albert Pujols in their backyard as a community college hitter, and somehow they are where they are. So,
do you remember what year? I think Trey Hillman might have been the guy.
Oh, maybe Hillman. That was the guy Dayton Moore hired. That was his.
I'm looking. He was with the Rangers 03 to 06. I can't remember.
That was after the 06 season. That's when
he was hired by the Orioles in 10.
Right, but no, the Showalter was let go by the Rangers after the 2006 season. That's when the Royals went to Japan and got Trey Hillman after Dayton Moore's first season. So they could have gone and gotten Buck Showalter then. Yes, that's the second time. It probably wasn't the Buddy Bell hiring. It was the the Trey Hillman hiring. They could have had Buck Showalter then. Dayton Moore, for whatever reason, I don't think he was ever in strong consideration. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. What a great way.
The next Buck Showalter's out there somewhere. So
yeah, Royals baseball. It is what it is. I quote Dr. Rany Jazayerli
and Brian Belichick.
Listen, it doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us if you hit that like button, the love button. Go ahead and let all your friends know if you enjoy the podcast. We stream it live 10 o'clock Central Time every Sunday night. And of course, then you can catch it wherever you get your podcast now. It's up everywhere. So if you're Apple and Google and Spotify's and wherever it is, you can get it. So make sure you get it downloaded. If you're just a viewer of the live stream, you can get it on the podcast as well. So for Rany Jazayerli, my name is Soren Petro, saying thank you for joining us here on Kauffman Corner.